Okay. Testing test. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing good, Jim.
All right, we'll go with just these two then, okay? Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Wieser Podcast. I'm Jim Delo. He's Jim Wieser. Jim has been a Democratic elected leader, head of a party. He's well-versed in the politics of the day and of the past and perhaps even of the future. And we get together to really kind of pick his brain about things that are going on. And there are tons of them right now. I don't even know where to start, but you know where I want to start, right?
I know exactly where you want
And
to
you
start.
didn't want to start here, but we're going
did
to do
not.
it anyways. Right now, you see, the issue is that we're doing a podcast here on Thursday, July 24th. And if you're listening at 8:40 in the morning, it's live, and you could call us at 219-845-1100 and comment to Jim and tell him what you think. But a lot of people will be listening on down the line. It might even be a year or 5 years later when I decide to play all this stuff or categorizing everything. And it's an interesting dynamic because what is going on right now with the Epstein files is on everybody's mind. If you go to any news site, the top 3 to 5 articles are all about the Epstein files, right? It's all that anybody's talking about this summer. But we don't know what's going to happen. And people that are on down the line in a year or 5 years later, no. God, those guys didn't know this happens or nothing happens. But ultimately, President Trump, it seems like they're slow walking the release of the Epstein files. And that is getting people on both sides of the aisle upset. What's happening?
You're asking me what's happening, huh? Look, if you're going to govern, or if you're going to run, I should say, if you're going to campaign and you're going to run for office on the basis of conspiracy theories, and probably a good 10 to 15% of your base are QAnon people, conspiracy people, they buy into all of this stuff, it's going to come back to bite you. It's just going to happen because you can't govern that way. You could campaign that way, but you can't govern that way. And what's happening is it's coming back to roost now, and it's coming back not because he's identified, just simply by being identified as one of the people doesn't mean that he was directly engaged in Trump, I'm talking about, engaged in any kind of criminal or lascivious conduct. The thing is, he puts himself in a position where he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, because he's always, he's talked about, all along, we got to get these people, we got to get them. There's these terrible Democrats that are doing this stuff. Besides, Epstein, there's Pizzagate, and there's leaders in the Democratic Party that are eating children. And I mean, the whole thing is so bizarre and ridiculous, but it's all out there. It's all the same kind of stuff, ultimately. So he's got to live with those consequences. And one of the things I think is so horrific now is that they don't know what to do. They are so caught in the switches, that is the Republican leadership, that they got to shut down the government to avoid it. I mean, think about that. A conspiracy theory, and don't get me wrong, things that Epstein did and his associate did were horrendous and terrible, and certainly anybody and everybody involved should be prosecuted. But the fact of the matter is, they're just stuck in the middle of this situation. And so how do they get out of it right now? You talk about slow walk, and that was the term you used. They shut down the government, literally, to avoid it.
Well, what we're talking about is that they basically sent Congress home early to avoid voting
Correct.
on subpoenas and investigations and so forth. There's also, one of the main top tactics that I see as a communications person and having worked in public relations is, President Trump and his assistants are very good at trying to change the topic, and they've done that many times.
Real good.
Well, now it's not working. I mean, they came out yesterday, Obama should be charged with treason. And I was like, what? And, that's a 10-year-old story that is just kind of, or 9-year-old story that was a blatant attempt to change the dialogue. And the dialogue is not changing. And I know you didn't want to open with this, but out of all the things, when they went after Trump for, gave him felonies and all that, I'm like, all you're doing is making him a sympathetic character, kind of like they went after Rahm Emanuel for not living in Chicago and being the chief of staff. How could he run for mayor? And then they made Rahm Emanuel, who was a very often caustic character, into a sympathetic figure, and he just won Chicago landslide because you went after him. And I'm like, same thing with Trump. All you're doing is strengthening him. Now it is Trump's own base that is going after him.
Right.
And then it makes you wonder, just release the files. If there's nothing in there, then let's get on with life in America. But if there is something in there and you're trying to hide something, then you've got something as big as Watergate. And so that is why a lot of people are looking at it right now on both sides.
Yeah, and I get it, and that makes sense. It doesn't, trying, you can't look at this stuff logically. I wish you could, but even trying to use some sense of logic, why wouldn't you just? You've got your base, which you got to hang on to, and you've got to keep them following you and in line because that's how he governs. You need to release it. If you don't release it, you're going to lose those people, and Congress is going to come back at some point in time, and those Republicans that represent that core group of folks, core group of MAGA people, are going to vote with the Democrats to issue those subpoenas. And that's what's going to happen. And then, it's Katie bar the door, and whatever happens, happens. And I have to believe that if as has now been disclosed by the Wall Street Journal, Pam Bondi told him in May that you're listed, you're named, and all of a sudden everything switches real fast, you kind of got to think something's there that they don't want folks to know about.
And it is, it's a mystery to us. Pull your mic just slightly closer to your mouth. It's a mystery to us, and I just think right now, the real harsh part of this whole thing is that children were involved with Epstein and sexual trafficking and abusing them. And that is, I think, sometimes lost in this kind of myriad discussions. And, if there's people out there that were involved in that, they should be held accountable. I agree with you. We got a lot to get to. Yeah. Let's get to this. The big, beautiful bill has passed. And you went off on it last time. Why? Remind us.
Well, I went off on it for a variety of reasons, or several reasons, but it crystallizes. The big, beautiful bill crystallizes the inhumanity of the government, of the Trump government.
Oh, you got phone calls? We'll get to them in a minute. Well, let's finish this part and we'll take some phone calls.
The inhumanity of the Trump government. If you take a look at all of what has occurred and what is contained in that bill, it comes out, you have almost 900-page bill. Things are going to dribble out because there's no way in the world in that short period of time you could have comprehended everything that was in there, and now we're finding out more and more. But one thing I want to focus on that people may not be aware of or just see it in passing is this idea of the government last week supporting the rescission of $9 billion of appropriated money. And I just want to I'd like to let everybody know, several years ago, I was asked to be a member of the Indiana Advisory Committee on, and this is a mouthful, for the U.S. Global Local Leadership Coalition. And ultimately what that means is we, the members of the advisory committee, participate in seminars and other things and we look at this stuff, and I just attended on July 9th by Zoom.
You know what? I'm gonna cut in here. Let's go to the phone. We'll call.
Okay.
So we'll take some of that, and we'll get into it later. Hey, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Good morning, Jed. Good morning, Jim. Dave Gierman.
Hey, Dave.
Okay, can I bring it back into Lake County and Gary, if I may? Can you tell me if you've heard? I just was actually texted yesterday about Gary possibly being redistricted again, and the 4th would be absorbing the 5th. So there's a challenge there that Marion Ivy and Linda Barnes Caldwell would have to run against each other for that district. Can you, if you do know, can you shed any light on that? And that's the other things you guys are going to cover, and I really don't have any comment on anything nationally. So just pretty much in Gary, that's my piece of heaven. So
all right,
I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. We're getting thank you. That fits with what we're going to be talking about. Is that what about national is affecting us here local?
Right.
We'll get to redistricting in a second, but go back to some of the things that you're looking at. The big beautiful bill that will affect us here locally.
Okay, well, locally, it's estimated. I obtained these figures with the help of Congressman Mervan. I obtained some of these figures so people would know how you all, those of us that are sitting here in Northwest Indiana, are going to be impacted, negatively impacted. And first of all, it's estimated that the bill will cause 54,000 manufacturing jobs in Indiana to be eliminated. Of those 54,000, you don't have to be a mathematical genius to know where the hub of manufacturing is, major manufacturing is in this state, and it's right here in our county. And the estimate in our county is that could result in a loss of anywhere between 5,500 and upwards of 10,000 might be an exaggeration, 8,000 or 9,000 manufacturing jobs that are going to be gone. That doesn't even include the loss of the hydrogen hub at BP, the billion dollar program that was approved in the Inflation Reduction Act that was going to provide additional manufacturing jobs. That I know when I was still the chairman of the Democratic Party, and I spent a lot of time talking to union heads. I know what an incredibly negative impact that's going to have on the unions, on the labor. I spoke. Kevin Roach and I had a lot of discussions about this. Randy Palmatier and I had discussions about this. It's going to really dramatically impact the economy in Northwest Indiana.
Kevin Roach is the head of Labor's 41, where I was. I come out of Labor's 41. And did you say Randy Palmatier?
And Randy
He's the head of the Building Trades Council.
He is.
So the effect on us is is multi-layered, but the 54,000 manufacturing jobs that are estimated does not include. And I'm with you. I have a little desk at 41 when I want to get away from people. They set it up and they just let me go in the back. If I have I need 3 hours of concentrated work or something, I go there and they got the strongest coffee in America and I just go in the back room and they let me go. But I've been following that hydrogen hub, and what it was is that they were going to make basically take the waste from hydrogen, and they were going to pump it about 86 miles south, and they were going to inject it into the center of the earth, into these big caverns like west of Lafayette. And evidently those caverns provide a crescent that go all the way up across Illinois into Wisconsin and then down to southern Indiana. And you were talking about not just $1 billion or $2 billion or $5 billion. It was going to make the BP modernization, which at that point was the largest construction project in Indiana, was going to dwarf it. And then all of a sudden, poof, all those jobs are gone.
They're gone. They're just gone by a stroke of a pen, by the insensitivity of the government. Just it all adds up to. We haven't even talked about what's going to happen to the healthcare industry. We haven't even talked about the loss of SNAP benefits. We haven't even talked about the loss of Pell Grants. All of these things are happening right now that are going to impact all of you here in Northwest Indiana in some way, shape, or form. And what it ultimately reflects, and I've said this, and I'll say it is, and I even made a note on this, they govern by cruelty, they govern by callousness, and they govern by what I say. The other C word is competency, but in their case, incompetency. They're incompetent. That cabinet of Trump's are, other than the Secretary of the Treasury, who at least has a background of competency, nobody has competency.
I'm going to pick up on that one. I kind of disagree with you on that one, but we are recording this podcast and a lot of the podcasts live in the WJOB JED TV studios on the campus of Purdue Northwest. And if you are here on July 24th, we'll take your phone call, 219-845-1100. Hey, you're on the air. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Good. How are you?
Good.
I wanted to touch on things. I wanted to circle back. You were saying about all these conspiracy theories.
Hey, can you shut your car window or whatever?
Yes.
We got a lot of background noise. Yeah.
I'm doing that right now as we speak.
Way to go. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Sorry. Getting back to promises about cleaning things up, we also heard for years that we were going to clean up the swamp and clean up the deep state, but there's three people that kind of, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't, if you connect the dots. Roy Cohn, Roger Stone, and Paul Manafort. How much deeper of state and how much deeper of swamp can you get? And getting back to the Elon debacle, even Bannon warned about him, and that's what happened. And he even warned about Pam Bondi because she was, before she was where she is now, she was on the Qatar and I think the UAE. She was getting over $200,000 a month paid salary.
That's a great point. I probably should add a fourth word to my C words, which is corruption, because it's inherent and it's rampant throughout that entire administration. I mean, Trump sells he sells. That's what he is. He's a salesman, and he sells the government. And people are there making money, and Pam Bondi's a good example. But yeah, you're right. All of those people are have been engaged in one way or another in kind of conspiracy. They come from that background of conspiracy theories and the allegations of the deep state and all of that. There's no question that that's part of their program.
Well, exactly. People need to. They don't know about it because they won't see that on certain so-called news shows. And if you want, like I said, if people want to look it up, Roy Cohn, Roger Stone, and Paul Manafort. He was the one that originally screwed things up in Ukraine because he got Putin's puppet in there before Zelensky, but people don't know that.
All right, man. Thanks for the phone call. 219-845-1100. And we're live on the radio here. We got to give the ID. It's AM 1230 WJOB and 104.7 FM. We're also streaming live on the YouTube channel WJOB 1230. And we are also, for I think this week, we're still on JED TV until we make the switch. The competency. Now, I understand there's not a lot of great background in running attorney generals or the FBI and all that kind of stuff. But I think that in terms of a communications and a strategy to solidify the base of Donald Trump, of people that believe in some of the same things that he do, and that are attracted to a strong personality, almost a personality cult, I think they're very effective at the just continuing to switch the narrative to where they want you to be looking. Got the big, beautiful bill through, which, if you really think about it, hurts most of the people who vote, that are pro-Trump. And I think it's a bad argument on the Democratic side to say, hey, you voted for a guy who came in and did a bunch of damage to your Medicare and to your SNAP benefits and, basically taking a lot of money away from your kids trying to go to college. All of these things are going on that are detrimental to you, but you're still for the personality. I think it's a brilliant way of what they've been able to put together. Outside of that, that part I think has to be made aware of at least.
Well, yeah, we've all known since he came down the escalator in 2015 that he was a showman and he was a communicator. We have all known that, and that's obviously, one, his strength. Two, is generally and almost always the strength of an autocrat, and he has some of his disciples that are effective at communicating that. But that wasn't really what I meant. I'm talking about people put into positions to operate a government, a democratic government, which they're not that interested in, but a democratic government. And there's no question that he has that ability to switch the narrative and to turn the narrative, which goes back to just the previous caller, the window trucker, the previous caller. So much goes on so fast because it's not only the issues that you have to deal with and the policy that you have to make, it's the distraction that you have to create, which is why I didn't want to start with Epstein, because it's just another story. It's just another distraction, a significant one, nevertheless, but it's another distraction, and it takes you away from what is really happening and going on.
I think I first interviewed Jim Wieser. This is the Wieser Podcast in 1985, maybe, when he was head of the Lake County Council here in Lake County, Indiana. And the entire time that I have known you, you have always kept a very, you're old school on, no one's going to see me get rattled, no one's going to see me get upset, and you have a certain old school way of going about it. Until of late, you've just gotten pissed, and it's beautiful. Yeah. I love it. That's why I'm sitting here.
The only way I could explain it and try to do it quickly is when I was a junior in college. That was 1968. I hate to admit, and a group of people young people came onto campus recruiting for Bobby Kennedy, who decided to put his hat in the ring late against Eugene McCarthy for the presidency, the nomination for the presidency during a very tumultuous time in our country. And I was so impressed by what they said. I was a political science major. I was the vice president of the political science club, and I went to this thing and I listened and I said, yeah, that's really what I want to do. I really think that's cool. I want to get involved. And I did. I signed up. I was in Cleveland, Ohio at the time, or outside of Cleveland. They found out I was from Indiana. Indiana was a big deal back then in the primary. Our primary was a big deal. And this was probably February or March. And when they found that out, they said, could you go back home to Indiana and help us over there? I said, well, I can during our break. I'd like to finish out my semester. So I did. And I was here. And I was with Bobby Kennedy when he came through. And he was in the parade.
Went down Ridge Road, right?
No. Well, he went down. I was with him when he went down White Oak.
No, it was John F. Kennedy that went down Calumet Avenue and Ridge Road. And
this was Bobby Kennedy. And he went down White Oak. And he went down through East Chicago, Hammond, went by my alma mater, Bishop Knoll. And it was just really cool. And then he gets assassinated. And for a long time, I was just so distraught as a young person that I just kind of did what I should not have done, which is kind of the heck with it. I finished college, fortunately went to law school and did the things I did. And then when I decided to get involved again in politics, I'm in Northwest Indiana. It's a different climate. It's a different culture. And I, right or wrong, I concluded that hopefully to be successful and represent my communities when I did in Highland and when I did at the county council, I just realized I had to temper it. It being out there how I really felt, I would describe myself in college as an extremely liberal Democrat, extremely liberal. I couldn't be that to be effective. I never lost that desire. I never lost those principles. There's a statement I always remember Bobby Kennedy made, and he wrote about it, and he said, and he took it from one of the English, from Locke or one of the English political philosophers. I don't remember which one, and it said that there was a difference between a politician and a statesman, and he described a statesman as someone who, being guided by or having principles. A statesman has principles and maintains his principles, but is guided by circumstances. And that's how I viewed my role in government. I needed to be guided by the circumstances. Never lost my principles. Always had them. Always believed in them. Always acted on them. But I was guided by the circumstances. So when you're a town councilman in Highland, people, their concern is, do you have a good police department? Are the parks getting cleaned? Is the garbage getting picked up? Are the roads being repaired? That's your role, and you assume that role, and you go with it. And what I tried to do is find other things, like I went on the Northwest Regional Plan Commission where I could expand my horizons, stuff like that, to compensate for it. But to get to the present day, I feel like I'm back in 1968. I truly do. And I laugh sometimes at people that say, "Oh my God, we got to send the Marines to L.A. for the alleged riots, and we got to mobilize and we got to get all these people." And I'm thinking, I was at Grant Park in 1968. Give me a break, folks. You never saw anything like that. What goes on in L.A. is child's play compared to that. So I come from that kind of a background, and I've just decided now that I'm sort of unfettered, I guess, I want to go back to my roots because I've never lost those principles, and that's why I do it.
Wow. I mean, I kind of had a hint in my head. I go, this guy is held back for a long time. Yeah. I mean, I've been interviewing you for it's 25, so 40 years off and on. And I'm like, there's another level. I did not realize what you just said about 1968. So you could be a little bit more openly liberal, obviously, or at least critical of what's going on. And then the holding back of the in your face or just unfettered emotions and feelings about things, you've held back forever. And I've tried to get you to talk like you're talking right now.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. And just to add one other factoid to why I feel the way I do is I was at John Carroll University on the east side of Cleveland. Kent State, it's about 45 minutes down the expressway. That's where we always had to go to party when you were at John Carroll. You went to Kent State. And it was my first year. I left John Carroll, and my first year as a law student is when the event happened at Kent State, the shooting. The reason I was so moved by that and so distraught about that is the general of the Ohio National Guard was General Del Corso. His son Bob was in my fraternity at John Carroll. And it tore me up, and it was devastating to Bob when that happened. So we had like kind of a direct connection to it. And to think that armed soldiers could invade an American campus and shoot and kill a student is so abhorrent and so beyond the pale. And what bothers me about today is we're not far from that. We're not far from that at all. Sending Marines who are trained to engage in conflict and combat and do all that stuff, and send them to try to allegedly control a riot that was never a riot to begin with, was a relatively, by my standards, peaceful protest, really has me concerned, agitated, and I just feel that now is my opportunity to speak out. This is it's been bottled up for a long time, and this is my opportunity. And I haven't changed my stripes. Same person I always was. It's just that I've got the opportunity now. I've got this sounding board to really express how I feel and why I feel what is occurring right now is so detrimental to our form of democracy and so detrimental to our citizens.
Do you feel like that's a shared feeling?
I'm not sure. I could tell you this. I among other things that I do, I've been for years on our class reunion committee from Bishop Knoll, because when you're here and people have moved out and gone other places, if you're going to run a reunion, it's got to be done by the people that are here. So I've been glad to do it, and I could tell you that is a shared feeling among my contemporaries. That's for sure. They all we talk about this at our reunion meetings, and it's not our main focus, but we talk about it, and I talk about it with other people that went through what we went through in the late 60s and early 70s, and it's a totally shared feeling.
So let's compare that. The late 60s, I was a little kid. I don't really remember. Yeah. I just remember in the early 70s pulling up the stoplights and my mom saying, "Don't look at him. Don't look at him." You know, the hippies would be next to you. And then I remember in the early 70s, my uncle lived with us, and he was a hippie-ish guy. And he went to Purdue Cal, and he would bring me over there, and they would throw the Frisbee around on it was way more open area than it is now. They've built so many buildings. And they would just be running around, and all these hippies would be around Purdue Calumet. And I remember that was the first time that, the women were actually like just taking their bras off right then and there. And it was kind of a weird thing. But I didn't realize the smell when I was like 10 years old until I got older, that the smell that I was smelling was weed that they were all smoking on the campus of Purdue Calumet. So I remembered a little bit, but the discord, I went later to Berkeley and studied some of the discord, and it seems like that kind of like it was a tinderbox and it blew up and there was violence. This seems like a lot of it's taking place on social media and on streaming media, but that the emotions are similar.
The emotions are similar. The circumstances and the facts are different. I would agree with that. It's and I truly believe that this is more dangerous. This is far more dangerous than what we encountered in the 60s, and maybe the early 70s, because this threatens our form of government and this threatens the rule of law. It's clear when you have from the president on down in your administration, that they're just always on attack. It's always an attack mode. It's always and the attack on the court system has been reprehensible and has resulted, unfortunately, in what we have now, which is a Supreme Court that the majority of which is comprised of people that I don't believe reflect the values of our country.
We'll get to that one next time. This is the Wieser Podcast. Hey, you can listen to all of these, WIESER. Just type that in to Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and you get to hear Jim Wieser talk. And I appreciate it, Jim.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Take care.
Until next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Until next time. See you later.